messing up a run or something happens to like kill runs consistently or whatever, even your favorite games, as a speedrunner at that point, you start being like, oh my god, this fucking game, why is it like this? Who made this? Why did you put this thing here? Why does this enemy do this? Why is this wall like this? You know, why is this menu like this? Like little things start to annoy you because you're playing the game so much, you get really hyper focused onto things to try and save those like little bits of time, and it gets frustrating, even if it's one of your favorite games. The devs on Devs React seem to enjoy their games being speedrun. For the most part, yeah, that's true.
Cheryl?
Devs React is usually really
Cheryl?
interesting, seeing the devs react to speedrunners and like world records and stuff, where they sit and they watch, and it's fun. I like the devs that get into it, where they're kind of trying to predict things. They're like, oh, I can remember QA finding a problem here and doing this thing. Maybe they're going to try to get over this wall. Maybe they're going to try to skip this one thing. And then the runner will do something completely out of left field that they're not expecting. And they're like, oh, wow, what? Like, you can do that? You can go there? That's a thing? Most people aren't going to run a game they hate. Most have a deep love or an understanding of the game they're playing, and devs recognize that too. For the most part, yeah. For the most part, yeah. Then there's some people who like speedrun games that they hate just because it says like Silent Hill in the title. You know, sometimes, some situations, people spend a lot of time speedrunning games they don't necessarily want to or like. But then you have these magical moments.
What's that?
I have to bring up like Silent Hill Homecoming.
Radio. What's going on
where
with radio?
All of my years playing Silent Hill Homecoming casually as a Silent Hill fan, I was like, man, I hate this fucking game. And it's one of my favorite speed games.
This is not a dream. What's happening to this place?
It's one of my absolute favorite speedrun games. Casually, as a Silent Hill game, not so good. But as a speedrun, holy shit, it's fun. It's fun and it's satisfying. It has just the right amount of like tech to make the route interesting, and the tech itself is very satisfying to pull off, so that when it works, you're like, yeah, I fucking clipped into that wall. And it's a very satisfying game. It's a very good speed game. So sometimes even a game that you hate casually might be a really good speed game. And sometimes a game that you really love casually is terrible to speedrun. Hey, Shusha. We're watching the story of the best dad in video games. I don't know. He's pretty good. But did you ever read the notes from Harry in Silent Hill 3? Where he's talking about raising Cheryl 2.0 after the end of this game? Where he's like, I don't even know if this baby's human. There's such crazy, mysterious circumstances surrounding this baby. He considered strangling a baby to death. He says in his notes, there were many times where I considered wrapping my hands around that tiny little girl's throat. It's like, oh. I mean, I kind of get it, but Jesus Christ, Harry. I mean, it's a mystery baby that was like born from thin air. That was potentially a cult's god being reborn in front of his eyes. He didn't know any better. But still. Do you still get to keep the #1 dad mug? When you write down strangling a baby to death in your journal as being like a thought that crossed your mind? Finding Cheryl like a $5 bill on the ground. Whoa, cool. Free baby. Hey, Jody, you're sick and can't have babies. Let's just take this one. Let's just fucking keep it. Is that Harry's wife's name? Yeah, Jody. Jody Mason. Didn't know that? I do not blame anybody for not knowing that, because it's never mentioned in Silent Hill 1 or Silent Hill 3. It's mentioned in supplemental materials and the play novel. You see her in Silent Hill 1 in the intro cutscene, as long as you don't have any previous completed save game data. You see her in the intro CG. But the trouble is, if you've beaten the game and you have previously completed save game data for good plus ending, yeah, you don't see her anymore after that. You see Sybil instead of her. Pretty cool touch. I mean, it's definitely an interesting thing, but poor Jodie. She's already barely mentioned as is. Oh, you just had to. You just had to. The old grab and slash. The old dick twist. Was doing so good. Not getting grabbed. It's a little detail that Harry barely talks about his wife to show how focused he is to find Cheryl. Well, he kind of... If you watch the cutscene, if you save Sybil in the amusement park, he kind of spills his guts and explains things to Sybil. How, like... He mentions it when you meet Kaufman as well, that his wife died. Or that his wife is already dead. But then he really opens up about it if you save Sybil and watch that cutscene, and he kind of explains to her that, like, even though she's adopted, that he found her. Ever since his wife died, she's like everything to him. So it's why he's willing to, like, go through all this fucking nightmare just to try to get her back. But then, you know, like I said, Silent Hill 3, a little bit conflicted after fighting a god and seeing her be reborn in front of your very eyes from thin air. Might have to strangle a baby. Maybe just think about strangling the baby. Didn't do it. I just thought about it. Considered it. Flipped a coin. Hey, Elsie. And hey, Angel. Okay, this was actually a much better school than I typically have. We had one grab and slash and a little bit of clumsy movement, but otherwise not too terrible. Oh, don't nudge me. All right, all right. As said, a little bit sloppy. Got grabbed and sliced once. Got nudged and knocked down by split-head lizard. But otherwise, not a terrible school. Not for me. Not for my standards. Couple wall bumps here and there too so far. Get juked. Hey, Pure Blood. I think Douglas was really fishy in Silent Hill 3. Especially with the no pants option. He's the most irresponsible adult ever, driving an emotionally unstable teenager to seek revenge on his employer. Kind of like so unreal, we're supposed to understand that he's part of the cult or something. He's not, though.
Were you?
He's not part of the cult. He's literally just a private eye for hire. And happened to be the one that Claudia Wolf hired. Otherwise, he doesn't have any affiliation with the cult. And once he kind of does his research on Heather and starts realizing that Claudia's not being upfront with everything about him, or to him, that's kind of why he's willing to help Heather. But I agree. He's not the most responsible person in the world. He's a broken man. He's sad about his son being dead. And he's lived a difficult life. He's 50-something years old. He's given up on keeping track of his age. Because at that point, especially if you like live by yourself, don't have any family or anything like that around, it's like, who gives a shit? Not keeping track of birthdays. Not keeping track of years. Douglas was having a rough time. Rough life. All right, first of all, I think trying to draw like an emperor's clothes and symbolic meaning from a Konami Code goofy extra New Game Plus costume is where you start delving into thinking about things a little too much, and that's coming from the guy who thinks way too hard about Silent Hill for a living. Oh, fuck me. I mean, there's a little bit of merit to what you're thinking, but the point is everybody is manipulating Heather. Like, literally everybody. Douglas, I think, is at the very least just sort of interested in the truth of what's going on. Somebody lied to him, in this case, Claudia, and he's trying to figure out the actual truth of what's going on. He has some history with the town of Silent Hill. He's been there on a missing persons case. He knows there's weird shit that goes on there. He knows bits and pieces about the cult. And then this lady lies to him. And he's trying to kind of piece things together. I think more for his own sake than anybody else's, but he is still sort of manipulating things. Claudia is also obviously sort of masterminding the whole thing. She hires him, and she's very much controlling aspects of what's going on, because her whole driving force is she knows about the god that's in Heather. She wants that god to be born. That god grows on and takes nourishment from negative emotions: hate, pain, sadness. So Claudia kills her father, puts her in situations to make her feel hate, pain, sadness, to grow that god. Like, she's manipulating things. Vincent knows Claudia's capabilities and does not want that to happen. He doesn't want all of that to take place. He doesn't want the god to be born. He doesn't want the earth to be scorched and humankind essentially ended. So he wants to put a stop to it, so he manipulates Heather into doing things that will effectively stop Claudia. Sends her after Leonard. Whoops. You know, everybody's manipulating her. It's not just Douglas. As far as Douglas almost shooting her, Douglas has a point. Douglas has a point. Like, it's something that I've brought up in my story playthroughs.
What's this?
Where it might only delay it, because essentially Heather could just reincarnate. Alessa could reincarnate again. But she would still have to come of age, and the god would still have to grow again. And at the very least, it could put off everything that's going on for another 18 years or so. Douglas is literally just trying to think of a logical situation to end what's going on. And he's pieced enough together to figure out killing Heather might be the way to do that. But he reconsiders because he's gotten to know her as a person.
Was I dreaming?
Hey, what's up, Wusscake? Good morning, dude. Hey, Dark Knight. Whoops. totally agree that if we go by what we're told in the game, you're right with what you're saying. I mean, that's what I try to focus on, is actual context and information of things in the game. I try not to theory craft on things that are a big stretch without sufficient reason to make that leap of faith. As far as like playing, story logic ideas. Like, you're trying to infer meaning to Douglas's character based on a goofy for fun cheat code where he's not wearing pants and the fact that he has hearts on his underwear, which is literally a cartoon gag that has been around since like Bugs Bunny in the 50s. That's like Elmer Fudd's pants fall down and he's wearing hearts on his underwear because it's silly. Oh, that didn't work. Like, it's literally just it's a joke thing. And you're trying to infer character meaning from it. I think you're thinking about it a little too hard.
Harry!
Love how this thing has insane amounts of iframes and doesn't give any indication of it. True. There's no visual change. It still, like, has blood and everything like that. Yo, EJ20T with the 57 months. The big 57. That is a long time of love and support. Thank you so much, EJ. Hope you're doing well this morning. Saying I love you long time? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Well, that's the thing, is like, you're definitely right in the aspect of, like, clearly there have been situations where even the devs have talked about deeper meanings and symbolism and aspects in the Silent Hill games, which is why so many fans like ourselves tend to analyze, but it gets to a point where it's very easy to overanalyze, and it's something that I, as a fan, have also had to come to terms with over the years, that sometimes something is just a visual gag. Sometimes something is just what it is at face value. And I would recommend that you, as a fan, if you have not listened to the Great Debate on YouTube, has some wonderful interviews with Jeremy Blaustein. Jeremy was the translator, localizer, casting director, among many, many, many other roles for Silent Hill 2, 3, and 4. I highly recommend listening to Jeremy's point of view on a lot of the stuff regarding the Silent Hill games, because there's a lot of things that he kind of puts into context for fans to understand. Like, yes, it's well crafted. Yes, the Team Silent guys had a lot of really grand ideas. They put a lot of subtlety and symbolism and meaning into the things that they did. But at the end of the day, they were also a bunch of people having fun, making a game for people to enjoy and be entertained by. And not everything is necessary to be so overanalyzed. Like, I was one of those fans that overanalyzed every little thing, you know, about every aspect of Silent Hill. You know, oh, they hired Donna Burke to voice Angela, even though Donna Burke's an older woman and Angela's supposed to be 17, and they wanted to make her sound more mature and more aged to represent how traumatized and abused she was for her entire life. And then you hear Jeremy Blaustein be like, Donna Burke was the most qualified actress. She auditioned for the part, and she got it because she was the one who auditioned and had acting experience. Like, that's it. You hear lines in Silent Hill 2 and 3, and you analyze exactly how people say things and exactly where they took a breath. Oh, it means so much that she said this word and then inhaled and then said this word, and the inflection that she had on this syllable. And then you have Jeremy Blaustein being like, yeah, we had a limited amount of time in the studio. A lot of things we only had one take on. There was a guy editing all the audio together who spoke Japanese and didn't speak English, who was in charge of the timing in between the dialogues being put into the game code. So sometimes there's awkward pauses. Like, not everything is as intentional as you think. They are beautiful, very well crafted games, but at the end of the day, they are not perfect. There are many things that are the result of schedules, budget, complete random circumstance of the time that it was being made. And a lot of things are literally like drawn from a hat. The whole UFO ending thing, as far as having any sort of deeper meaning or consideration or anything like that, literally the idea was drawn from a hat. They had a bunch of members on the dev team put in ideas for joke endings, and the UFO endings were just, or the dog ending from Silent Hill 2, it was stuff that was just drawn from a hat. Like, what do we go with? One of the alternatives to it could have been the sun was too bright. That was one of the other actual ideas put up by one of the members of the team, of the dev team, to do a joke ending around. Was that everything in Silent Hill was happening because the sun was too bright. Outside of that, like, there is no deeper meaning or significance to it. It's
Sybil.
just what wound up being chosen and what the dev team thought was funny for a joke ending and what they went with, you know? So when you start analyzing, like, oh, Douglas, if you use the Konami code and take Douglas's pants off and he's got hearts on his boxers, and it's inference to his character and how he reacts to, how he relates to Heather, and I think you're at that point where you're crossing the line and overanalyzing, which is very easy to do. I've done it. I probably still do it. But I've tried to be a little bit more contextually and critically aware of my own thought patterns towards overanalyzing. Because it's a difficult thing for a lot of fans to get to that point, especially if you've been, like me, a fan who's been closely researching and analyzing the games for a very long time now. Oh yeah, exactly, Dimaru. Like, he says there is a lot of times where they gave people direction to be, you know, when it comes to like the voice acting and stuff. They gave people direction to sound more spaced out, or to sound less focused, or to make it sound weird or otherworldly. Like, there was a lot of that was direction. It wasn't all accidental. It's not black or white. It's not all here or there. It's not just everything is intentional and has super deep meaning, and it's not all circumstantial and accidental that it wound up the way that it was. It's a middle gray area that uses aspects of both of those things. There are a lot of things that do have deeper meaning, that are intentional, and do deserve closer analysis and deeper thought than just what's presented at surface level in the game. But then there's also a lot of stuff that's just like, wouldn't it be funny if it was a dog? Wouldn't it be funny if his underwear had hearts? And there's no reason to get wrapped up in overanalyzing beyond that point. As said, check out Jeremy Blaustein's interviews on the Great Debate channel on YouTube, as well as any of his written interviews over the years. I think Jeremy gives some really good insight for kind of contextualizing a lot of that stuff from the standpoint of somebody who had a lot of influence over the games, much more than just a translator, which is how a lot of people view him, as just like a translator, a localizer. But he worked very closely with Team Silent. He was one of the people they went to for ideas when they started working on several of the sequels, because he was kind of their guide to American culture, like what would be acceptable to an American audience, what would be creepier, what would be scarier, what would come off as too foreign or too weird that people might not get. Like, he had a lot of involvement in the games turning out the way that they were. So getting his perspective on things, I think, really helps a lot, because he does keep things very very real, very grounded, with that divide between things that are intentional and coming from the minds of a very creative team of people, and things that are like, hey, we were just a bunch of people making a game with a timeline. We had deadlines, we had budgets. Some stuff worked out as happy accidents, and some stuff, you know, was intentional. And there's something to be said about how well done the Silent Hill games are at blurring that line between what's intended and what's not, to the point where people are still talking about and theorizing and discussing these games 20 years later or more at this point. I think that really is a great testament to the quality and depth of these games. So, yeah, as I said, it's understandable to occasionally overthink things in this series. Just Suikoden 2, he worked on the first one, but not like as the lead. Yeah, but again, he's one of those guys, he's very humble about like what he contributes to a lot of the projects he's been on. Like if you interview him and ask him directly, he'll talk about how much stuff he had to do, but at the same time, he's not one of those ones who's like, I don't know. He never claims to be like undercredited. He just kind of accepts that, like, yeah, that was how game development was, and sometimes you had to go outside of what your role is on the staff credits to, like, get shit done. Like, he's very real, very down to earth in the way that he describes a lot of the stuff that they do in the gaming industry, and he's got a lot of experience in the gaming industry to sort of give very grounded opinions on things. Gives, as I said, a lot of really good perspective into game development from Jeremy. Yeah, I think Snatcher was the first one, or like one of the first really major ones that he worked with them on. And yeah, he's definitely gone on record multiple interviews talking about Konami being a bunch of shitlords in so many words. Want to hear my crazy theory about Snatcher? As long as we don't start talking about what pattern of underwear Kojima has on, then let's hear it. I might die in this last hallway, and that would be so fucking sad, because this has been a decent run. We lived, bitch. We lived, bitch. Now I want to know about a heart-shaped ARG. I've been living in your heart-shaped ARG for all weeks. Ooh, baby. Is this it? This is it. This is it. I have a good feeling about this run. That felt good. Maybe I was just distracted
Cheryl.
from how bad the run was going because I was kind of talking about Jeremy Blaustein for the last hour, but
Cheryl?
that felt like a pretty good run.
Can't leave like this. This can't be happening. Cheryl? Cheryl!
Okay, so in the beginning of Snatcher, we're told that the world came under attack by a synthetic virus called Lucifer Alpha. Alpha is the Greek letter A. A in card form it could be called Ace. Well, it turns out there's a product called Lucifer Ace
Go.
IRL that is for marking with bioluminescence. And that's all I got so far. All right. Was that a GG, you think? That might be a new personal best. That might be a new PB. That might be faster than my 34:52. Let's see. I got the romper skip on what, third or fourth try? Not great. School I got grabbed and sliced once, but otherwise went pretty smoothly. Oh, I got fucked by the nurses in Alchemilla the first time around, and I shot one. That wasted some time. There was maybe enough time lost that might not be it. And I was just busy ranting, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Ananas. Hey, Ananas. Hope you're doing well today. Is it a PB? Oh, we did it. It took almost